Have you ever noticed that sometimes you wake up from a full night of sleep, yet you feel just as exhausted as when you laid down? What if the tiredness you feel is not in your body, but in a deeper, quieter part of yourself? Most people do not realize that there is a kind of exhaustion that rest cannot cure. It is an invisible weight, a silent depletion. If you have ever felt emotionally drained, endlessly striving, or simply tired in a way that sleep cannot fix, this is for you. Stay until the end, because the final lesson may change the way you see this pain forever. We live in a world that glorifies constant motion. We measure our worth by how much we produce, how quickly we solve problems, and how heavily we carry the burdens of those around us. You push through the days, you manage the crises, you keep the peace. You try to force the puzzle pieces of your life to fit together exactly as you planned. But beneath the surface, your mind is a storm that never settles. You are replaying conversations from 3 days ago. You are bracing yourself against future problems that do not even exist yet. You are carrying the heavy, unseen baggage of other people's expectations, and you wonder why closing your eyes at night does not bring you peace. You are physically resting, but your mind is still running a marathon. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that this specific kind of exhaustion does not come from physical labor. It comes from attachment. It comes from the mind's relentless grip on how things should be, rather than softening into how they actually are. One of the deepest lessons of Buddhism is that we suffer not because the world is demanding, but because we hold on so tightly to the illusion of control. We fight the current of life. We resist impermanence. We are exhausted by our own resistance to the present moment. Imagine holding a glass of water with your arm stretched out in front of you. If you hold it for a single minute, it is light. It is no problem at all. If you hold it for an hour, your arm will begin to ache. If you hold it for a whole day, your arm will feel paralyzed with deep, radiating pain. The actual weight of the glass never changes. It is exactly the same, but the longer you hold on to it, the heavier it becomes. This is what we do with our thoughts, our past regrets, and our fears about tomorrow. You hold on to the stress of your workday. You hold on to a careless remark someone made. You hold on to the creeping fear that you are somehow falling behind in life. The events themselves may be small, just a simple glass of water, but because you never set them down, they eventually drain all the life force out of you. Sleep cannot fix a tired arm if you never let go of the glass. Sleep repairs the body, but only letting go can repair the mind. Think about your own life right now. Ask yourself, what are you still holding on to? What invisible weight is draining your energy while you lay in the dark? What are you afraid will happen if you finally just put the glass down? Pause, breathe, let that sink in. Notice the tension you are holding in your jaw, your shoulders, your chest. Observe the heavy thoughts without fighting them. You do not have to fix everything right this second. You do not have to figure it all out. You do not have to chase what is already leaving. Just for a moment, allow yourself to put the weight down. Do your part, then release the outcome. Because true rest is not just the absence of movement, it is the absence of resistance. Peace is not something you chase, it is something you make space for. But recognizing this deep exhaustion is only the first step. To truly find stillness, we must look at why we keep picking up the weight in the first place. And this is where the next truth begins. What if the harder you try, the further peace moves away? Here is a truth few people want to face. We have been conditioned to believe that exhaustion is the price of admission for a good life. You are told that if you just work a little harder, plan a little better, and push a little further, you will finally reach a place of safety and rest. So you strive. You endlessly evaluate where you are against where you think you should be. But look closely at this relentless striving. It is a heavy, invisible armor you wear every single day. You try to force outcomes in your career. You try to micromanage how others perceive you. You desperately attempt to arrange the circumstances of your life so that you will never have to feel vulnerable, anxious, or uncertain. You treat yourself as an endless project, always chasing the next version of yourself that will finally be worthy of rest. Buddhism reminds us that this constant state of striving is a profound source of suffering. It is born from craving, the deep-seated belief that the present moment is somehow flawed and that peace only exists in the future once certain conditions are perfectly met. We live our entire lives leaning forward, rushing past the present moment to get to a future that never actually arrives. When you are always striving to become, you completely forget how to simply be. Imagine a boat moving through rough water on a wide, ancient river. The current is strong, and it naturally flows toward the ocean. But instead of letting the river carry you, you sit in the boat, gripping the oars, rowing frantically against the current, trying to steer the water itself. You exhaust your arms and break your spirit fighting the natural flow, believing that if you just row hard enough, you can control the river. But the river cannot be controlled. Your frantic rowing does not change the water, it only exhausts the person holding the oars. This is what happens when you try to force life to match the timeline in your head. You exhaust yourself fighting reality. You feel frustrated when success takes longer than you expected. You feel drained by the pressure to always be producing, achieving, and advancing. You compare your quiet, behind-the-scenes struggles to the loud, curated successes of everyone around you. The pressure builds in your chest, and soon, your entire existence feels like one long, unending task. Think about your own life. Ask yourself, are you rowing against the current right now? What are you trying so desperately to force? Is this endless striving actually bringing you peace? Or is it feeding your fear that you are somehow falling behind? Pause. Breathe. Observe this urge to always be moving forward and let it pass. You do not need to earn your right to exist. You do not need to constantly prove your value through exhaustion. Stop trying to force the door open. Just for a moment, put down the oars. Let the river carry you for a while. Let life unfold without your constant intervention. Because true stillness is not found by reaching the finish line. It is found when you realize there was never a race to begin with. But letting go of the need to strive forces us to confront a very painful illusion. And this is where the next truth begins. What if the destination you are exhausting yourself to reach does not actually exist? Here is the truth few people want to face. We spend our days waiting for the moment when everything will finally be resolved. You tell yourself, once I finish this project, then I can rest. Once I reach a certain income, I will feel secure. Once this relationship is fixed, I will finally be happy. You live in a constant state of almost. You put your peace on hold, treating the present moment as a frustrating obstacle to get through, rather than the only place you can actually live. You believe that arriving at a certain point will finally cure the quiet exhaustion inside you. But the goalposts keep shifting. When you solve one problem, your mind immediately searches for the next thing to worry about. The exhaustion you feel is the heavy tax of living entirely in tomorrow. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that this illusion of arriving is one of the greatest tricks of the mind. In Buddhist thought, the concept of impermanence reminds us that nothing stays still. The future is a mirage constructed by craving. Whenever you reach the horizon simply moves further away. We are conditioned to think that if we can just arrange the external pieces of our lives perfectly, our internal world will finally quiet down. But the external world is always changing. The belief that a future event will permanently satisfy your soul and grant you true rest is a deep source of suffering. Imagine walking through a vast, dry desert, chasing a shimmering pool of water in the distance. The heat is heavy, and your throat is parched. Because you are so focused on the horizon, you ignore the shade of the rocks beside you. You ignore the cool breeze that passes by in the late afternoon. You keep your eyes locked only on that distant water. But as you walk closer, the water vanishes. It was only light bending on the sand. You are exhausted, not just from the long walk, but from the endless disappointment of chasing a destination that was never real. This is how we navigate the modern world. We chase the promotion, the idealized relationship, the perfect quiet weekend, thinking they are the ultimate oasis. We endure overwhelming stress, we sacrifice our quiet evenings, and we completely ignore the gentle, peaceful moments happening right now in our own homes. We are terrified of falling behind, so we keep walking. We believe that once we reach that milestone, the heavy, tired feeling in our bones will vanish forever. But when you finally hold the prize, the thrill fades. A new problem arises, a new goal is set. The mirage moves again, and the deep exhaustion remains. Think about your own life. Ask yourself, how many times have you reached a goal only to feel empty the next day? Are you ignoring the life happening around you because you are too busy staring at a horizon that keeps moving? What are you waiting for before you allow yourself to feel peace? Pause, breathe. Bring your attention back to exactly where you are sitting. You do not need to be anywhere else. Stop waiting for the perfect conditions to allow yourself to rest. Let the present moment be enough, because peace is not a place you arrive at. It is the way you choose to walk through the desert. But recognizing the illusion of the destination is only part of the journey. To truly rest, we must also look at the heavy bags we are carrying along the way. And this is where the next truth begins. 4. Carrying what was never yours to hold. What if the heaviest weight on your shoulders does not even belong to you? Here is the truth few people want to face. We spend so much of our vital energy trying to fix the people around us. You listen to everyone's problems. You try to manage the moods of your family. You twist yourself into small shapes so that others will not feel uncomfortable or upset. You feel entirely responsible for the happiness of your partner, your children, your friends, and your co-workers. You absorb their anger. You carry their sadness. You secretly believe that if you just care enough, if you just try hard enough, you can save them from their own pain. But this kind of devotion is deeply exhausting. It is an impossible burden that drains your spirit and leaves you feeling completely hollowed out by the end of the day. Buddhist wisdom teaches us the profound practice of deep compassion without entanglement. We are reminded that every single person must walk their own path and face the consequences of their own actions. Compassion means walking beside someone in the dark. It means offering light, but it does not mean carrying them. When we try to fix someone else's suffering by taking it into our own hearts, we are often acting out of attachment, not true love. We are trying to control their journey because their pain makes us uncomfortable. Imagine walking up a steep and narrow mountain trail. As you climb, you notice others struggling with their heavy packs. Out of kindness, you take a large stone from their bag and place it into yours. Then you take another stone from someone else, and another. Soon, your back is bending under the immense weight. Your legs are shaking. You can barely breathe. You cannot even look up to see the beautiful sky. You took these stones out of love, but now you are collapsing. And the tragic truth is, the people you tried to help are still climbing, while you are stuck in the dirt, crushed by stones that were never yours to carry. This is what happens when you mistake people-pleasing for love. You say yes when your soul is screaming no, simply because you are terrified of being a disappointment. You take on extra emotional labor at work to keep the peace. You walk on eggshells at home to prevent a conflict. You walk into a room and instantly absorb the anxiety in the air. You are so busy holding everyone else together that you have completely lost yourself. And this is exactly why you wake up tired. Your soul is exhausted from holding up a world you were never meant to support. Think about your own life. Ask yourself, whose stones are you carrying right now? Are you exhausted because of your own life, or because you are living 3 other lives at the exact same time? What would actually happen if you simply let them carry their own weight? Pause, breathe. Notice the heavy burdens resting on your chest. You do not have to fix them. You do not have to save everyone. You are not powerless. You can love someone deeply without making their storm your own. Because peace is not found by managing the emotions of the world. It is found by releasing your grip on how others choose to live. But setting down these burdens reveals a new, quiet discomfort. And this is where the next truth begins. 5. The difference between stopping and resting. What if simply doing nothing is not actually giving you rest? Here is the truth few people want to face. We often confuse stopping our bodies with resting our minds. You come home after a long, draining day. You are completely depleted. You collapse onto the couch, telling yourself that you are finally taking a break. But what do you actually do? You stare at a screen. You scroll endlessly through the lives of others. You binge-watch shows to escape your own reality. Your physical body is entirely still, but your mind is running on a treadmill. It is processing hundreds of images, opinions, and fragmented pieces of information every single minute. You feel like you are resting because you are no longer working. But deep inside, your mind is just as exhausted as it was at the office. You are not resting. You are simply distracting yourself from your own fatigue. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that true rest requires presence, not absence. In Buddhist thought, distraction is recognized as a subtle form of craving, a deep-seated desire to be anywhere but in the current moment. We use noise and endless stimulation to build a wall between ourselves and our inner stillness. We believe that if we just turn off our physical activity, the mind will naturally repair itself. But Buddhism reminds us that true rest is not an escape from reality. True rest is the courage to gently abide in the present moment without needing to alter it, fix it, or run away from it. Imagine a glass filled with water and a handful of dark mud. When you shake the glass, the water becomes entirely cloudy. This is your mind during the day, stirred up by stress, deadlines, and the heavy emotions of other people. Now, imagine that you want the water to be clear again. If you take the glass and put it into the freezer, the water stops moving, but the mud is still suspended inside the ice. The water is frozen, but it is not clear. This is what happens when you numb yourself with endless distractions. The only way to truly clear the water is to set the glass on a quiet table and leave it completely alone. Slowly, gently, the mud will sink to the bottom. The water will become crystal clear all on its own. This is what we fail to do in our modern lives. We freeze our minds with social media, entertainment, and endless noise. We mistake numbing for healing. We feel guilty when we are not producing, so we fill our free time with shallow consumption. We do not allow the debris of our heavy days to naturally settle to the bottom, and so the water of our mind remains permanently cloudy. We go to sleep with a stirred-up mind, and we wake up feeling completely unrefreshed. Think about your own life. Ask yourself, when was the last time you allowed yourself to do absolutely nothing? Are you actually resting your mind in the evenings? Or are you just changing the channel of your stress? What are you trying to avoid by filling every quiet moment with noise? Pause, breathe, put the screen down. Just for a moment, let yourself sit quietly in the room. You do not need to be entertained. You do not need to consume anything. Let the mud slowly sink to the bottom. Because peace is not found by escaping your life. It is found by softly returning to it. But when the noise finally stops and the water begins to clear, we often come face to face with something we have been running from. And this is where the next truth begins. 6. The fear of empty space. What if the silence you are running from is the exact medicine you need to heal? Here is the truth few people want to face. We are absolutely terrified of the quiet. When you finally set the distractions down, when you stop striving, when you stop carrying everyone else, an uncomfortable stillness settles in. Suddenly, you are left alone with yourself. And for many of us, that is a terrifying place to be. When the noise of the day fades, the thoughts you have been suppressing rush to the surface. The old insecurities, the unanswered questions about your future, the quiet grief you never fully processed. You feel a sudden spike of anxiety. So, you panic. You immediately reach for your phone, or you call a friend, or you start a new project. You would rather be exhausted by chaos than be left alone with your own mind. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that this fear of emptiness is exactly what keeps us trapped in cycles of exhaustion. In Buddhism, we are taught to observe the mind, to sit with discomfort without immediately trying to escape it. We often view empty space in our lives as a void, a dark hole that must instantly be filled with activity, people, or noise. But true mindfulness reveals that this emptiness is not a void at all. It is pure spaciousness. It is the quiet canvas upon which deep clarity is drawn. When we run from the quiet, we are running from our own deep wisdom. Imagine a heavy, locked door at the end of a long, dark hallway. For years, every time you felt a pang of sadness, a wave of anxiety, or a flash of inadequacy, you shoved that emotion behind the door and turned the key. Over time, the pressure behind the door has grown immense. The wood creaks, the door rattles. Because you are terrified of what might break out, you spend all of your energy leaning against the door, forcefully holding it shut. Your deep exhaustion comes from this constant pushing. You think that opening the door will destroy you, but if you simply unlock it and step back, the tightly packed emotions will tumble out, lose their terrifying power, and eventually settle as harmless dust on the floor. This is how we live our modern lives. We overbook our calendars. We stay in draining relationships simply because they are familiar. We obsess over the flaws of other people just to avoid looking at our own unhealed wounds. We spend all of our energy pushing against the locked door, desperate to keep our deepest fears hidden from ourselves. But this resistance is exactly what drains your vital life force. You are tired because your soul is always on guard. Think about your own life. Ask yourself, what are you avoiding in the quiet? What is waiting behind your locked door? Are you exhausted because of your daily life, or because of the immense energy it takes to hide from yourself? Pause, breathe. You do not need to be afraid of your own mind. Let the quiet rise without making it your enemy. Stop leaning against the door. Allow the uncomfortable feelings to surface without judging them, fearing them, or following them. Because peace is not found by constantly running away from yourself. It is found by turning around, facing the dark, and realizing there was never a monster there to begin with. But once you stop running, you must confront the deep urge to repair the broken pieces you find. And this is where the next truth begins. 7. Releasing the need to fix yourself. What if the most exhausting thing you do is treat yourself as a broken project? Here is the truth few people want to face. We spend our lives convinced that we are somehow fundamentally flawed. You constantly analyze your weaknesses. You criticize yourself for not being more disciplined, more patient, more successful. You replay every conversation, wondering if you said the wrong thing or appeared foolish. You set impossible standards and quietly punish yourself when you inevitably fall short. You view every setback as permanent evidence that you are simply not enough. This constant drive for self-improvement becomes a silent, heavy obsession. You are treating yourself like a broken machine that needs constant upgrading, rather than a living, breathing human being who simply needs compassion. You wake up tired because your own mind is a courtroom, and you are always on trial. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that this endless need to fix ourselves stems from a deep illusion. In Buddhist thought, the core of who you are is already whole, already pure, and already complete. The suffering does not come from being broken. It comes from the false, heavy belief that you need to be perfectly polished to deserve peace or love. We are reminded that true awakening is not about acquiring new, better pieces to add to your personality. It is about gently letting go of the false belief that you were ever lacking in the first place. Imagine a beautiful ancient gold statue. Centuries ago, to protect it from a coming storm, the caretakers covered it entirely in thick grey clay. Over the years, the clay hardened, the storm passed, and everyone forgot what was underneath. You might look at the cracked, dirty clay and think it is deeply flawed. You might spend all of your vital energy trying to paint the clay, smooth the rough edges, or carefully patch the deep cracks. You exhaust yourself trying to make the outside look perfect. But the real work is not fixing the clay. The real work is gently, patiently chipping it away to reveal the pure, radiant gold that has always been there, completely untouched and entirely perfect. This is what happens when you spend your life trying to fix your perceived flaws. You are desperately trying to polish the clay. You exhaust yourself in endless cycles of self-improvement, obsessing over your productivity, your appearance, or your social standing. You compare your quiet, unseen struggles to the loud, curated successes of others. The pressure to succeed, the fear of failure, the constant need for outside approval, these are just layers of heavy clay. You are so busy criticizing the cracks in your exterior that you have forgotten the unshakable worth that lives underneath. Think about your own life. Ask yourself, how much of your deep daily exhaustion comes from that constant internal voice telling you that you are not good enough yet? What if there is actually nothing fundamentally wrong with you? What if you do not need to be fixed? Pause, breathe, listen to that critical voice, and simply let it fade into the silence. Stop evaluating yourself for just 1 minute. Let the feeling of inadequacy rise without making it your identity. You do not need to change who you are to be worthy of rest, because peace is not found by finally achieving perfection. It is found by dropping the heavy burden of trying to be perfect. But once you stop trying to fix yourself, you must learn how to simply let the world around you exist as it is. And this is where the next truth begins. 8. The quiet power of letting things be. What if the most powerful action you can take is no action at all? Here is the truth few people want to face. We are obsessed with intervening. You believe that if you do not constantly manage a situation, it will completely fall apart. You try to force a delayed apology from someone who hurt you. You send one more message to clarify exactly what you meant, terrified of being misunderstood. You anxiously try to resolve a conflict the very second it happens, unable to let any tension linger in the room. You treat every single uncomfortable moment as an urgent fire that you personally must extinguish. You are utterly exhausted because you are trying to write the script for everyone else's behavior. You believe that your constant intervention is what keeps your life together, but it is actually the very thing tearing your peace apart. Buddhist wisdom teaches us the profound practice of equanimity, the gentle art of letting things be. In Buddhist thought, there is a deep understanding that the universe has its own rhythm, entirely independent of our personal desires. Much of our deep exhaustion comes from our desperate need to accelerate time or force a resolution. We are reminded that taking a step back does not mean you do not care. It means you care enough to let truth reveal itself naturally. It is the deep wisdom of trusting the natural unfolding of life without adding your own frantic, anxious energy to the mix. Imagine standing in a wide, open field, watching a dark, heavy storm cloud block the warmth of the sun. You want the light to return. But what can you actually do? You cannot yell at the cloud to move faster. You cannot push the wind with your bare hands. You cannot throw stones at the sky to break the storm apart. If you stand there screaming at the weather, you will only exhaust your own voice and break your own spirit. The storm does not care about your frustration. The only way to see the sun again is to simply stand still, find quiet shelter, and let the wind do its work. Eventually, the cloud will drift away on its own. It always does. This is what we fail to remember in our daily lives. We try to yell at the storm clouds in our relationships, our careers, and our personal timelines. We try to force people to understand us before their hearts are ready. We try to force success before the season is right. We feel anxious when we are ignored, so we push harder, adding our own wind to a storm that simply needs time to pass. We exhaust ourselves trying to control the weather of our lives, completely forgetting that some things can only be resolved by the quiet passage of time. Think about your own life. Ask yourself, what situation are you desperately trying to force right now? What storm cloud are you currently shouting at? What would actually happen if you just took a step back and allowed it to resolve without your constant intervention? Pause. Breathe. Notice the desperate, heavy urge to step in and control the outcome. Let that urge rise, and then let it pass without acting on it. You do not need to have the last word. You do not need to resolve the tension this very second. Do your part, then release the outcome. Just for today, let the cloud drift. Because peace is not found by clearing the sky with your own hands. It is found by learning how to stand quietly in the rain. But once you finally let the external world be, you are left with only one place left to go. And this is where the final truth begins. 9. Returning to the sanctuary within. Remember that heavy, invisible exhaustion we talked about at the very beginning. The kind that sleep cannot touch, the kind that settles deep in your bones after a lifetime of holding on, forcing, and fixing. You have spent years waking up tired because your mind has been running a marathon you never actually signed up for. You have been carrying a world that was never yours to hold. You have been rowing against a river that only knows how to flow. You have been waiting for a future destination to finally grant you permission to rest, all while treating your beautiful, whole self as a broken, unfinished project. But the deep tiredness you feel right now is not a punishment. It is not a sign of failure or weakness. It is a quiet, desperate signal from your own inner life. It is your soul begging you to finally put the heavy glass of water down. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that true, restorative stillness is always available to you. It is not a reward that you must earn through endless striving. It is not waiting for you at the end of a perfectly managed life. Once every problem is solved and every person around you is pleased, the sanctuary you have been exhausting yourself trying to build is, and always has been, right here inside you. It is found in the quiet, empty space where you finally stop resisting reality, where you embrace the beautiful impermanence of all things, where you release the crushing grip of attachment and simply allow yourself to be. You do not have to be the wind trying to push the heavy storm clouds away. You do not have to be the exhausted sailor fighting the ancient river. You do not have to spend another single day trying to perfectly patch the clay. You can simply be the quiet mountain, sitting silently as the weather changes around you. You can be the deep, still water beneath the crashing waves. Think about your own life one last time. What would happen if you stopped treating your exhaustion as something to cure, and instead treated it as a profound teacher? It is teaching you that you cannot control the universe. It is showing you the limits of your own attachment. It is inviting you to return to the only place where true rest exists. Think about how much lighter your chest would feel if you just let life meet you exactly where you are today. You do not need to figure out tomorrow. You do not need to rewrite yesterday. You only need to breathe in this exact moment. Let the tight muscles in your back finally soften. Let the racing thoughts slow down and drift like clouds across an open, empty sky. You have done enough. You have worried enough. You have planned and protected and carried the weight of the world for long enough. Acknowledge your own immense effort and then give yourself the profound grace of laying it all down. The struggle is over if you simply choose to let it be over. The peace you have been desperately chasing is not a destination. It is already waiting for you, patiently, in the exact center of the present moment. You do not have to wait for the world to stop spinning before you decide to find your rest. If these lessons touched your heart, share this video with someone who may need a little more peace today. You can let go now.